Idle games. Part 2. Idle games, perhaps more than any other genre, have such a difficult sales pitch to someone who's never played them or is not familiar with them. So like, it's a game that you don't really play, and it's just like the numbers go up. Doesn't that sound fun? Doesn't it sound fun when I make a number go up? It's like counting but faster and less interactive. Come on, you'll love it. And what's crazy about that is, I do love it. I learned a lot about myself making my first Idle games video, and while I'm definitely no expert yet, I did put a few hundred hours into some of the games from that video. I'm excited to revisit the genre, particularly because that video kind of changed my life. My channel has far more than doubled since I made that video, which is crazy, so thank you for that, but also partially because I just love idle games now. There are still so many idle games for us to check out, and you guys left me a ton of suggestions in the last video, and that's how I built most of my list for this one. I did still try to find a few randos to mix things up and keep it interesting, but I'm really excited to check these out. I played 20 more idle games for 2 hours each to find the best ones. Couple of things really quick. I know that basically every idle game needs way more than 2 hours to get a solid idea of everything it has to offer, which is why I'm not here to review the whole game. What I'm really doing is just checking out the hook. What kind of first impression is each game trying to make on me, and how much do I want to keep playing it, if at all. I learned a lot from my last video, especially after following up on some of those games, so I feel like my eye for this has gotten slightly better. It'll be interesting to see what you guys think. With all that out of the way, let's get to it. We'll kick it off with the most recommended game from my first Idle Games video, Melvor Idle. It was also the game that I received the most complaints about not having in the video, despite being very clear I was only including free games. But if I've learned anything making these videos, it's that the kinds of people who complain at YouTubers in the comments are generally also exactly the kind of people who don't pay attention to the actual video before they do their complaining. So I guess we'll just have to live with it. To be clear, I always appreciate the recommendations. I never appreciate the whining. This game was a popular topic for good reason. It's really damn good. It's basically old school RuneScape without any active gameplay, and it has a surprisingly addictive gameplay loop. Many of the skills sort of piggyback on each other, so you will need to maintain a reasonable balance with certain skills as you progress. In addition to the wide variety of skills, there's also a huge combat section for you to progress through, with tons of different enemies and unique bosses and stuff to kill. You have a lot of milestones and achievements, loot to manage. There really is a lot going on here for an idle game. You can pretty seamlessly transition from active and idle gameplay based on how you're feeling. If you wanted to be engaged for a bit, you can focus in on some particular skills, do some combat, manage your loot, and then when you're ready to drag it over to the second monitor and do something else for a little while, just throw on one of the basic skills and let it ride for a bit. Despite the large amount of content here, it felt pretty approachable and easy to understand, and while I'm sure it gets a little more complicated later on, I imagine you'll pick it up as you go, and I'm sure there are plenty of guides around if needed. All in all, Melvor Idle was really good, way better than that idle skilling garbage from the last video. I definitely recommend it. Next is Adventure Capitalist, and this seems like one of the more approachable idle games I've played so far. You get started immediately, and it takes no time at all to understand what's happening. You're spending the large majority of your time on this one screen, so there isn't a ton to learn in the UI either. You will have to manually click for a bit, but it won't be long before you can start hiring managers that will automatically click each thing for you, and then it's just a matter of purchasing more of each of those things over time so they'll generate more income for you. You'll unlock passive perks at certain amounts for each item. There are purchasable upgrades, and it's all just very straightforward. Eventually, you'll unlock investors, which is essentially the prestige system in the game, and every angel you get increases your overall earnings, and then the angels themselves become a currency later on. There are also other big chunks of content to unlock, like going to the moon and starting some businesses there, but that'll come a bit later. It's honestly a really solid little idle game, and if you're someone who is new to idle games and looking for one to get you started that's not going to confuse or overwhelm you, I think Adventure Capitalist is one of the better options you're going to find. Next is Tower Wizard, and this one's really sick. I liked it a lot. It has such a cool style and aesthetic to it, the music is dope, and the gameplay's great. This would be an easy game to just have open 24/7. The manifestation of numbers going up here is in the advancement of this tower, and every time you do advance, you add a new section that introduces a new resource or complements the resources you're already gathering. The size of the map seems to indicate there are quite a few more buildings and things to progress into as well, so I get the impression there's a ton of content here. It starts out simple enough, but after a couple of advancements, you will be juggling a few different resources as well as a wide variety of ways to increase their production, so there probably are ways to maximize efficiency here for those of you that like to dig into the numbers like that. When your progression starts to feel too slow, you can prestige, which will net you some points to spend in this skill tree that offer everything from straight up increases to resource generation to things like 80% increased speed on the last building you clicked. So they got pretty creative with what's available in the skill tree here, which is pretty cool. I also just appreciate how much effort seems to have gone into the visuals. It looks like a pretty basic little art style at first glance, but watching it play and seeing the animations and noticing the little details details the longer you look at it, it's really a beautiful game. Extremely solid idle game here. I definitely think Tower Wizard is worth a play. Moving along, we have Digseum, and I'll start by saying that this is not really as much of an idle game, despite that being one of the main tags for it on Steam. It sort of is, I guess. It definitely has familiar systems and elements, and you technically can let it sit and idle and generate, but the active gameplay loop never really slowed down in my 2 hours. That being said, I did enjoy my time with it, and particularly in my last 20 minutes or so, started to feel really addicted to making progress. It's a bit of a slow burn, but when it starts picking up, you really feel like you're rolling. You're essentially building a museum, a very basic looking museum where all of your exhibits are just in one long line. You'll go to a dig site and dig by clicking on squares of dirt until you're out of stamina, with the goal being to find every buried artifact in that given trip. Once you can afford it, you can unlock the next stage, which will generally either be bigger or have tougher blocks that require more hits, or both. You make your money by people visiting your museum, which gets more expensive as you find and level up artifacts. Ideally, you're finding every artifact and dream fragment from each location before moving on to the next, and when you hit a point where the income isn't rolling in fast enough to feasibly purchase upgrades or unlock the next location, you'll prestige and spin your dream fragments on a skill tree that has a very wide variety of skills for you to invest in. As I said, I was locked in for the entire 2 hours, and I never hit a point where I felt like it would make sense to just let it sit and generate passively, but it's very possible later on that becomes more reasonable. Get your finger out of your nose while you're watching my videos, please. I think between the numbers go up aspect, the collection aspect of trying to get every artifact from every stage, and the progression through the skill tree, there's plenty here to scratch multiple itches you may have if you like idle games, but it's important to keep in mind that it might take a bit before this feels like a traditional idle game. All that being said, I had a great time with Digseum. I'd recommend it if what you've seen here looks interesting at all. Up next is Zombidle, and this game highlights something that I think is really interesting about these games in particular. I didn't really care for this one, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the game at all. It's a cool idea for the foundation of an idle game. I think the style fits, and there are lots of animations for all the different things happening. It's simple enough to understand, and most importantly of all, number go up. It just didn't do anything for me really, and I don't even know if I know why. I just never found myself interested in what was happening or in making any progress. You start off clicking the screen to do damage to these farm buildings, and eventually you earn enough skulls to start summoning zombies of different types to do damage passively. It's a fairly standard format for this type of game, and it's all well done. Again, I have no issues with the quality of this game, and it came highly recommended from the comments of my first idle games video. A lot of people like this one, and I don't think they're wrong to, and this takes us back to what I was saying about what is so interesting about these games. Sometimes, for reasons you might not even be able to explain, one of these games will resonate with you in ways that very similar games just don't. If we break this down, this game isn't terribly different from Adventure Capitalist, at least in the very early stages, but I'm far more likely to play that than I am this one. One thing I did really like about this game is here. They did this pop-up where you'll get resources for sharing the game on Facebook, and if you click no, the button just falls away, forcing you to click yes, and then another one of the devs slides in to save the day and you get the resources anyway. It's pretty silly. Despite this game not really doing anything for me, I still think it's very solid, and again, very popular based on the comments from my other video, so I'm gonna say I do still recommend you check this out if it's doing anything for you here. You might just end up loving it. Next is Journey to Incrementalia. I had a good time here. This one was cool. It felt like a fairly unique experience while still feeling familiar to the genre. It's another one that you will really like if you enjoy games with a bit more depth and decision making in how you develop. Between the skill tree and which abilities to put levels into, your experience here will probably differ quite a bit from someone else's. You're basically summoning minions to break down walls, and as you progress, the minions have different abilities, and then the skill tree affects how you play in a number of ways. The clicking aspect is pretty different from anything I've seen here as well. Rather than just spam clicking, you have this mana orb that is generating mana for you to spend abilities on, and you can just click and hold on it to generate faster. If you do it too long, the orb will crack, and then if you keep going, it will break for a bit and go on cooldown. You're basically just trying to find a balance in your progression of generating mana while also increasing the DPS of your minions so you can continue to break through walls. Little side quests will pop up that basically just charge mana to progress through, and as rewards you'll get different items that buff you in some way, or sometimes just a pile of souls for you to summon more units. Journey to Incrementalia was pretty cool, and great for anyone who's looking for a bit more of a challenge and depth in their idle games, and also anyone looking for a bit of a different experience in the genre. Up next is the Gnorp Apologue, and I absolutely loved this one. This is such a cool little game. It's so creative and cute. I really liked everything about it. It's another one that has such a different take than a lot of the games I've played like this. I also really like the aesthetic here. This primarily black and white setup with the little splashes of color is awesome. I'm a sucker for stuff like this. You're basically growing your little civilization of Gnorps, and they all exist to contribute to the breaking and collecting of this rock. Every time a Gnorp hits it, shards will fly off, and other Gnorps will collect them, and this is how you'll generate your main currency. You use this to build more housing so you can have more Gnorps, as well as new buildings with different functions and upgrades to your Gnorps and abilities. It's such a satisfying, addictive gameplay loop. I was very happy actively playing this for the entire 2 hours. There's so much variety here, and there are animations for everything. This civilization really feels alive as it grows. It's cute. There are also cosmetic unlockables you get as you progress and hit certain achievements. Just in my time playing, I got these little flower hats. You have Gnorps smashing into the rocks, archers firing different types of arrows, mountaineers that climb to the top of the pile and throw shards close to the collection building so your collectors don't have to run as far. You'll eventually unlock Gnorps with guns, and there's just a bunch of variety there. And there are so many different ways to upgrade everything that you can really spend some time digging into the details here if that's your thing. It also seems to be important to maintain a good pace of collection because that's how you generate prestige points. Whenever you like, you can prestige and cash in the points you've earned in a skill tree, which again is pretty involved. I like the look of it, the music is dope, the gameplay loop is insanely fun. This one is just a banger on all fronts. I highly recommend everyone try the Gnorp Apologue if you haven't already. I feel like you're all but guaranteed to love it. Moving on, we have Farmer against Potatoes Idle, and this one I'd say is pretty surprising. It's such a silly concept and sounds so goofy. I had a buddy recommend this to me a good while back, and I remember just immediately thinking I wasn't interested, and then one night I got bored enough to give it a shot and ended up putting over 50 hours in it. It's been a long time since then, so I don't remember much, but thankfully it let me start a new game, so that's what we did for this video. Again, it's pretty silly. You're a farmer being attacked by potatoes, and your goal is to get stronger and tougher so you can progress through the stages that net you more currency and better gear drops. It has a surprising amount of systems in it aside from the levels that you're putting into your farmer. You'll unlock farming at a certain point, which is something I never really got far enough into to understand. I tried resetting the tutorial for it, but it wouldn't redo it, so I just missed out. You'll unlock your worm farm a little later on, which is another system tied to improving things like your attack power and health regen, with other aspects of that unlocking later as well. There are cosmetics for your farmer, and he'll also just look different based on the gear you equip on him. There's a whack-a-mole style minigame you can play that gives you different temporary buffs if you perform well enough, with a shop tied to that as well. There was also still plenty of stuff to unlock along the bottom of the screen at the end of my 2 hours. There really is a lot of content here, and again, I think the complexity and depth here will catch you off guard a bit because it's a game about a dude fighting potatoes. Farmers Against Potato Idle is way more fun than you think it's going to be, and if you haven't played it yet, I think it's worth checking out. Next is Clicker Heroes, and this is about as simple and approachable as it gets, I'd say. An enemy will show up, you click it to do damage, eventually you can start hiring and leveling up other warriors that will automatically do damage for you, and every 10 monsters you kill, you can progress to the next stage. If you hit a boss stage you can't clear, you drop down a stage and farm a bit until your DPS is high enough to get through that boss stage. Your warriors typically have abilities that unlock at certain increments that do things like increase their DPS, unlock abilities for you like temporary auto clickers, or upgrade everyone's DPS, among other things as you progress. There are a bunch of achievements, some cosmetic unlocks, and I use that word loosely as your warriors aren't actually in the battle or anything, but those also seem to buff them in different ways. I enjoyed it despite it seeming very basic in functionality and design. The numbers go up aspect here is pretty satisfying. Not a ton else to say about it. It's perhaps the most approachable and easy to follow game in the whole genre, and if you're looking for one to try to see if you like these types of things, Clicker Heroes is a great option for that. Next is Idling to Rule the Gods, and this is a great example of how things like the aesthetic and overall personality of a game, as well as how clear you are with your guidance early on, can be so important. In many ways, this game plays similarly to NGU Idle, which was one of my favorites from my last video, but I really didn't like this game much at all. For starters, I don't particularly care for the UI, but I can usually get past that fairly easily if I find the game to be fun and engaging. My big issue with this one specifically is that it's just confusing. There's so much going on here, and the game doesn't explain itself very well at all, in my opinion. There isn't much of a tutorial, and the tab with tutorial adjacent information just isn't really helpful. Sometimes even the way it tells you what to do is confusing, and I just didn't know what it meant. Like, before you do that, you might want to kill all your shadow clones in monster fights, for example. I have no idea what that means. The only monster fights I'm aware of are here, and none of my shadow clones seem to be getting consumed here. I just lose and it would go on a little cooldown. I don't understand the rebirth thing or how to actually impact the numbers. It seems to be suggesting to wait until all the numbers are green here, and I checked at one point and for a few seconds they were, and then 2 of them turned red without me changing anything. I have no idea why or what I was supposed to do to make them green again. I spent a long time trying to figure out what to do with my pet mouse and literally made no progress there. The in-game text is clearly translated to English from something else, which I think might be the cause of how unclear it can be at times. There are also just some other weird things going on here. It charges you currency to customize your character, which is fine, but it charges for even the most basic stuff. It's just odd. This game might be pretty dope once you get the hang of it, but I'm not interested enough to put in the work that seems to be required to understand this one, so I probably won't be playing Idling to Rule the Gods again. Next is The Perfect Tower 2, and this one is super dope. I could definitely get hooked on this one. Getting started is very straightforward. You have this tower in the middle of a crossroad with blocks closing in on it, and your goal is to increase the tower's ability to survive, doing so through balancing your damage output and HP regen. You start off with some very basic upgrades, but as you play, you'll unlock more and you'll have to start sort of choosing your loadout for each run, with things like extra HP, HP regen, lifesteal, attack speed, firing multiple shots, and apparently a ton more based on the size of the inventory. You'll collect these little white crates that can then be converted into different color crates depending on which building you want to use them in, and each building obviously serves a different purpose. You have construction, which lets you build and upgrade things, the workshop, the factory, the mines, and several more to unlock. The tutorials are all excellent, and you can definitely see the depth and complexity being teased for later, but the game does a great job of introducing each system and getting you comfortable with the foundational elements of each building and its function. The first few runs will keep you very actively engaged, as you'll need to pay attention to which upgrades you're choosing and when, but after clearing the first stage, I seem to have unlocked endless mode, so after a few upgrades I went back and had basically set up a run that looked like it would have gone on for a long time before it failed. I eventually ended it myself so that I could explore a bit more of the game, but it appears after a bit of time investment and some initial setup, your runs can become pretty passive. You'll also start building and upgrading things in your town that passively generate different resources for you as well, so I imagine it all sort of snowballs into more idle gameplay as you go. The Perfect Tower 2 was super fun, I'll probably play it again. Moving along, we have Lootun, and this one is fantastic, I really enjoyed it. It's essentially a party RPG where you're building characters of a few different classes, leveling them up, giving them new skills and power-ups, and always looking to improve their gear. It's pretty intuitive and the tutorial is great. There wasn't really anything I was super confused about, and anything that I didn't fully understand right away only took a few minutes of clicking around to get the gist of. There are also upgrades in the form of buildings to construct and upgrade, some of which will unlock all the familiar professions, all of which operate passively for the most part. You'll occasionally get a tool drop that upgrades your current tool, but it all seemed to require very little of my attention, at least at this stage of the game. There's quite a bit of depth here as well, and I get the impression that for anyone that really wants to dig in and min-max and really pick it all apart, there's more than plenty of that here for you. And if you just wanted to play it fairly casually, upgrading gear as better rarities drop and just sort of leisurely progressing, that seems like it would work as well, at least up to a certain point. The UI is also great. Once you learn where everything is, you'll appreciate the quality of life and ease of access from one thing to the next, especially when those things are related. I was very impressed with Lootun. This is likely to be one of my favorites from the entire video. Next is Cauldron, and this one is really cool, but it's probably the least idle of any game in the video. You'll see a path to it becoming more of an idle game over time, but there is a bit of an active time investment along that journey. The good news there is that the game is really fun. It's essentially a collection of mini-games with a little bit of exploration and combat. Each mini-game offers a different resource, and your sidekick will generate these resources for you passively, based on your best performance in that particular minigame. You can brew each resource in the Cauldron to increase, among several other things, your storage capacity for the passively generated resources. So, for example, this is the apple catching minigame. You'll keep playing this, investing the apples into upgrades for the minigame so you can perform better, so that your passive apple generation can improve. The upgrades will begin to change your performance, as well as how the minigame works in general, pretty significantly. This is how each minigame works at its core, but each plays very differently from another. The map is covered in darkness, and you have to interact with these patches of darkness, which will start combat with the monsters in that area, and if you clear it, you unlock that part of the map, giving you access to a wide variety of different things that I'll let you find out on your own. You'll soon unlock auto combat, so you won't have to babysit that as much. The art style is really cute, the writing is really good and funny, I enjoyed it a lot. I was also surprised about how the game continued to open up as I explored. I sort of thought I had seen all the foundational stuff and then I'd find a whole new thing to get involved with. This one's really fun, the 2 hours flew by while I was playing. If you're looking for something a bit more active than the traditional idle game that still offers a lot of the familiar things we all love about idle games, I think Cauldron is an excellent one for you to check out. Next is Military Incremental Complex, and this one is pretty new. It came out in November 2025, and it just randomly caught my eye when I was browsing Steam looking for a few idle games I've never heard of. I thought it would be cool to have such a new idle game in the list, and I'm really glad I did. I love this one, and I was not expecting to at all. I don't necessarily have a problem with the military theme or anything, but I also didn't really expect it to be able to engage me the way it did. But holy hell, man, this game just feels about perfect to me. This was clearly made by someone who plays a lot of idle games, because everything here just makes so much sense and the progression feels amazing. You're basically producing and selling weapons, and as you progress, you'll be able to invest in things that facilitate doing so on a larger scale, whether it be through price increases, automating and increasing production, and so on. You'll start out making ammo, which is a manual process in which you click the case button, then the gunpowder button, and then the bullet button. After a bit of doing it manually, you'll be able to purchase an unlock that removes one of the steps, then one that lets you hold down the button to produce them, and then finally automate the entire process. One really cool thing here is that each thing you produce has its own unique production process, and I thought that was a pretty creative approach, and I liked the way they did it. I made it to producing ammo, grenades, and guns, but you don't have to take that route. One of the tabs here is research, and as your interns make progress, they'll unlock tabs where you can purchase upgrades. These tabs will often have two options for you to choose from, so in this one, for example, you can choose to either unlock the production of grenades or just increase how much your ammo sells for. This allows you to advance in a way that suits you. If you want to keep it simple and focus on one thing, you can, and if you like the idea of producing as many different things as possible, you can do that too. You'll spend a while worthwhile purchasing your materials to make your weapons and ammo, but eventually unlock the ability to start purchasing mines and production facilities to make your own materials. The pace at which you progress into automating different steps of the process, and the way it gives you other things to focus on as this happens, is just fantastic in my opinion. The game is also very easy to understand despite having a pretty wide array of things to do, and there's obviously a ton more to unlock and learn here. I definitely was not expecting this, but Military Incremental Complex is definitely one of my favorites from the video. Highly recommend. Next is Tiny Aquarium, and this was supposed to be Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realm, but I apparently put about 50 hours into that one a long time ago, and there's no way to reset it that I could find. And rather than spend the entire 2 hours trying to figure out what I'd unlocked and how the game works again, I decided to just replace it with another pretty common recommendation in the comments from my last Idle Games video, so here we are. This is a bit different than a lot of the other games in this video in the sense that it's not something that I think is going to consume you with needing to make numbers go up to get your dopamine. There are definitely dopamine hits here, but it's much slower paced and clearly supposed to be cute and relaxing over anything else. You are filling up your aquarium with fish and decorations, and you acquire these things through a few different means. There's a little shop where you can buy eggs that will hatch into random fish of whatever rarity the egg is. You can also go fishing, where you'll mostly find junk to sell early on, but occasionally new fish and sometimes decorations for your fish tank. As you get more gold, you're able to upgrade your aquarium, as well as your fishing pole to make fishing easier, and I assume catch a wider variety of fish over time. You will occasionally need to clean your tank and feed your fish, and it's pretty cute when you hatch an egg and have a little baby swimming around. You also seem to be able to have multiple aquariums, and there are a lot of different ways to decorate it with several different backgrounds and bottoms and effects in addition to all the different kinds of decorations you can place however you please. In your aquarium, you will occasionally see this bubble floating to the top, and if you click it, you'll get some coins. Or sometimes you'll get lucky and get a bubble egg, which is how I got my bubble dolphins. There's a fish dex showing you how many fish there are to catch and which ones you have, and there are plenty. There are a bunch of different rarities as well as special and unique fish to find. The game also has a social element to it, and when you go fish, there will usually be other players in the area doing the same. You can also fish solo if you prefer. You have the option to visit people's tanks to see what they've done and what kinds of fish they have and leave reactions as you please. It's a pretty cute aspect of the game, and by all accounts, the community is really nice. This game also has different modes. If you've ever played Rusty's Retirement, it has a mode similar to that, where it sort of just sits on your desktop without interfering with anything you're doing if you like having it open all the time. One thing I'll say about this is that switching to this mode and then back to full screen really made the game struggle to run smoothly. It got very framey and laggy, and I had to close it and reopen it to make it run smooth again. I'm not sure what that's about or if there's a way around it, but it's worth mentioning for anyone that encounters it. All in all, this one's cute. If you're looking for something with low intensity and you like the idea of having some digital pet fish to care for, you'll probably love Tiny Aquarium. Next is Antimatter Dimensions, and first things first, this link up here is not a Rickroll. It's actually not, surprisingly. This game came highly recommended in my first Idle Games video, particularly in response to my coverage of Revolution Idle. It was a pretty popular sentiment that Revolution Idle was essentially ripping off Antimatter Dimensions, and to many of those commenters' dismay, I gotta tell ya, I like Revolution Idle a lot better. I've also done a bit of research on this topic, and it's apparently not quite the case that they ripped this game off, but it's a pretty common thing, unfortunately, in gaming for there to be a portion of people who accuse any game inspired by another game of simply ripping off the other game. There are certainly similarities here, but I don't know if I think it's fair to call Revolution Idle a ripoff. Anyway, that's a different conversation for another time. We're here to review my first 2 hours in Antimatter Dimensions, and it was fine. I certainly see the appeal. It's easy enough, sort of anyway, to get rolling. It's easy in the sense that there isn't much for you to click, but actually understanding what each thing is doing is another story. The click for info tooltip at the top right won't go away no matter how thoroughly I comb through every single page in it, and don't worry, you guys know me well enough by now to know that that's not driving me absolutely fucking insane or anything. You're essentially just pumping currency into each stage of these antimatter dimensions, each of which is generating for the previous one, resulting in your accumulation of antimatter increasing as you go. Eventually, you'll be able to get a dimension boost, which will reset your progress, but also speed it up and unlock the next dimension for purchase once you progress to it. And you're just going to be repeating this cycle for a while. See? Not super complicated in practice. Now, if I learned anything from the 220 hours I put into Revolution Idle, this game is definitely going to keep expanding as you go, and there will be way more to do. But in the early stages, this was pretty much it. My favorite thing about Antimatter Dimensions is the ticker at the top. I got a few really good laughs out of it. I think my favorite might have been, please disregard any undeserved compliments. This is definitely a solid idle game, and I'm sure the longer you play it, the better it gets. I'll say I recommend Antimatter Dimensions if for no other reason than the ticker at the top, but also if you stopped me on the street and asked me, I'd probably tell you to just play Revolution Idle instead. You can't see me, but I look real smug right now about how much that pisses off all the Antimatter Dimensions purists. Moving along, we have Trimps, and I love thinking about the creator of this game explaining it to someone before they made it. Okay, I'm gonna make this game. It's going to be kind of an idle game, right? And basically there are these little creatures called Trimps, and your goal is to capture a couple of these Trimps and then train them to do things like farming, woodcutting, and mining, but then you also have to build an army of them and send them into battle. And their friend was probably like, "Are you okay?" And then they had a literal 45-minute fist fight in the front yard about it and then made the game together. That's how I like to imagine it happened anyway. This is a pretty cool little game. As I said in my, what I imagine to be lore-accurate recreation of how the game was made, it's an idle colony sim of sorts, but in a simplified form compared to your traditional colony sim. You'll start out doing tasks manually until you're able to capture a couple of Trimps and put them to work. As you progress, you'll have to keep building more housing in different facilities so that your population can expand, and then find a good balance in what you're powering up and building so that your army can continue making progress. Trimps are insatiable little beings, and any Trimps in your colony that aren't given a job to do will immediately start breeding, and breed in perpetuity until you give them something to do. I like the UI here. Everything is all happening on screen at once. Sometimes these games having multiple tabs can feel a little overwhelming and make it feel much harder to keep up with, but all your information is in front of you at all times here, at least early on. As you start to unlock different tabs, you'll be comfortable enough that it won't feel like an issue. It's simple enough to keep up with, but very obviously offers a level of depth that should keep the min-maxers satisfied for a long time. If you like the RPG style idle games, and the idea of meshing that with the colony sim elements I've talked about, you will almost certainly enjoy Trimps. Next is Sell to Singularity, and I am so the target audience for this one. I really enjoyed this game. I had no idea what it was going in and was pleasantly surprised with the concept. I've always been such a big space nerd and fascinated with the origin of everything, and I love what they've done here. You're basically starting in the earliest stages of Earth and going through the stages of development of the planet and life on it. The progression is really smooth, all the systems are easy to pick up on, and there seems to be plenty here. In addition to your main gameplay loop, you'll soon unlock access to different events that involve playing different stages of the game for a different type of currency. There's a cosmetic shop with some pretty fun stuff like Pangea Earth or Flat Earth, as well as cosmetics for your different life forms and stuff. It's cool. I really love the design choices here, and I get a kick out of seeing everything I'm unlocking and adding in real time. An example is that every jellyfish you purchase is actually swimming around in the ocean tab. You will also reset your simulation occasionally and spend points to power up a variety of elements to your gameplay. This is essentially the game's prestige system. I found myself extremely curious about how far the progression goes here. Do we ever make it to land animals? Do we ever make it to humans? How far does it actually go? All of the systems I experienced here felt very well done, and the whole game overall feels very polished, and I like the way that they've tweaked certain elements to keep it interesting. The event I played for a bit was rocks, and the goal seems to be to advance as far through and collect as many different types of rocks as possible before the event ends. And as you collect more rocks, you start collecting more types of currency that complement each other in different ways as you progress. It's nothing crazy, but it did keep it interesting, and I'd imagine as you get deeper in, there's a lot more to keep up with. Sell to Singularity is very likely going to be my favorite from the entire video, and the one I continue playing for a while. Definitely recommend it. Moving along, we have Milky Way Idle, and if you liked the idea of Melvor Idle, but it just wasn't cute enough for you, this is your game. I also actually find it easier to follow than Melvor, and Melvor isn't particularly hard to follow as it is, so I think that's quite a compliment for this game. I enjoyed this one a lot. It's got a great, concise little tutorial to get you started, and then something I really liked is that after the tutorial, you have a tab of tasks to work toward completing, and I think they do an excellent job of further familiarizing you with how the game works in the general gameplay loop. It won't specifically tell you to, but you'll sort of realize as you're working through them that if you go and upgrade certain tools, you'll get through them more efficiently, and as you start venturing into combat, you realize you need to craft yourself some gear. The game is set up in a nice way for you to figure these things out without being blatantly told, but it's simple enough that I think even newer players would pick up on the idea, and the UI isn't so overwhelming or confusing that it would distract you from being able to realize these things, so it's all just really well done in my opinion. There's no shortage of content here. There are tons of skills and professions to level, different cows to unlock to produce different materials, combat, gearing, trading, guilds, just a ton going on. This game also has perhaps the most accessible social aspect of any of the games I've played so far. The chat is just right here in your main UI, and you can't actually participate until your total level is 100, which will take a little bit. This is probably to try and combat spam bots and trolls and stuff. I did keep an eye on the chat throughout my 2 hours, and this really seems like a lovely little community. There's a good mix of chat about the game and people sharing advice, as well as people talking about their real lives, and you can really see that this is a pretty close-knit community, and occasionally a newer player would pop in and ask for advice, and everyone was very helpful. It was really nice to see. The game is super cute, it feels very well put together and easy to understand. It appears to have a ton of content, and some of the profiles in the chat were well over a year old, and it has the added bonus of having what seems like a really nice community of people that is very easily accessible if that's something you're looking for. I think Milky Way Idle is a great game for players of any level of experience. Highly recommend. And last, but certainly not least, is Cookie Clicker. I didn't include this in my first Idle Games video because I was only doing free games. And I don't know why no one bothered to tell me this, but Cookie Clicker is apparently free on the internet. I purchased it it on Steam anyway though, because I like to do hood rat stuff with my friends. This was actually kind of surreal to finally play. Cookie Clicker is a big part of why I even decided to make the first video, and then it ended up not even being in the video. So in a roundabout way, Cookie Clicker is kind of responsible for the success I've been having since I began this series. The first click on this cookie was quite a bit more meaningful to me than anyone might realize, and it was really cool to finally get here. The game itself is exactly what you think it is. You click this cookie for a little bit, and then start investing in things that click the cookie for you, and then start investing in things that generate cookies automatically. It's the quintessential clicker game. As one of the first clicker games, it's cool to go back and see where so much of the genre got their inspiration. And I know someone's in the comments right now hit me with an actually Progress Quest was the first clicker game or something, but you know what I mean. I know Cookie Clicker is not actually the first clicker game, but it is definitely one of the ones that helped put them on the map in such a big way. And you can't help but see the inspiration all throughout the genre. Cookie Clicker is fairly simple in comparison. Perhaps it opens up a bit later, but in my 2 hours, it was literally and exclusively just increase the amount of cookies you generate per second and nothing else. But it was also great. It didn't require much of me. It didn't overwhelm me with a bunch of tabs or choices or convoluted systems. Just keep buying things that make more cookies faster. That's it. I also want to be clear. I'm not speaking on whether or not it ever does get more complicated. I'm just saying in my 2 hours, it stayed very simple. There are a shit ton of achievements to unlock here, which reminds me of Shawnee Doo's video where he 100%ed this game, and it's great. I'll link it below for anyone interested. I'm of course going to recommend Cookie Clicker if for no other reason than to say if you like these games and haven't played it, it deserves a little bit of your time for how important it's been to the genre. It's also just great if you're looking to make some numbers go up in a very simple way that doesn't ask much of you, so yeah, go check it out. It's free in browser, by the way. No one will tell you that, but it is. Before we wrap up, I thought I would tell you my top 5 favorites from the video very quickly, just to give you a little point of reference if you wanted it. In no particular order, Military Incremental Complex was definitely one of my favorites. The Perfect Tower 2 is one I'm going to revisit for sure. The Gnorp Apologue I am just in love with. I think it's so good. Lootun I found very interesting. It was a lot of fun. I'm sure I'll revisit it. And To Singularity, which I am totally addicted to. I cannot stop playing To Singularity. It has just consumed me. And you remember when I was like, do we ever get to land animals? Do we ever get to humans? Yeah, we get to that. And way beyond. It goes way beyond that stuff. It's a huge game. So if you're looking for one with a ton of content, I'll second my recommendation on that. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope you found a couple of new games to check out, or maybe got the nudge you needed to try one you've had your eye on for a while. Let me know if you decide to try any of these, and seeing as there is still a vast sea of idle games to explore, I will absolutely do another video on the genre. So leave me some suggestions of games you'd like to see in the next one. If you haven't and you feel so compelled, hit the like button as that can help the video go out to more viewers. Subscribe if you want to see more of what I'm doing, and the algorithm thinks you'll really like the video on the screen right now, so see if it's right. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one.